I didn't expect the bank to stare back at me like it knew something I didn't. The moment I handed over my father's old card, the one he'd hidden all his life, the room fell into a strange, heavy silence. What happened next made me question everything I thought I knew about him and my marriage. I had left my husband's house with nothing but a small suitcase and the fading smell of his cologne on my clothes. The evening was cold, and the city lights blurred through my tired eyes as I made my way to the only place I thought might still hold a piece of safety. My late father's belongings. Among them, tucked inside an old leather wallet, was a bank card I had never seen before. I didn't know then that the moment I tried to use it would unravel a story larger than the betrayal that pushed me out of my home. The house was quiet in the way abandoned places are quiet, as if every sound had left long before I arrived. I stood in my father's doorway with my suitcase still in hand, watching the thin lines of morning light fall across the dusty floor. The window was half open, letting in a slow breath of cold air. It felt like the room was exhaling after years of holding itself still. I didn't plan to come here, but when my husband shut the door behind me last night, his voice flat, his eyes tired of me, my feet brought me to the only place that once felt safe. I set my suitcase down beside the old iron bed, the one with the frame that squeaked whenever he sat on it. The air smelled like old books, dried paint, and something faintly metallic, the scent of tools my father never stopped using. I closed the door gently behind me, as though the room would break if I wasn't careful. For a while, I just stood there, letting the silence settle over me. It pressed itself against my chest like a warm, heavy blanket. I lowered myself onto the floor. The wood was cold, colder than I remembered. I pulled one of the old boxes toward me, the one I hadn't touched since the funeral. The cardboard was soft at the corners, worn by years of waiting. I shouldn't have opened it. I thought that even as I lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of papers tied with string, small rusty keys, and photos that were fading at the edges. Photos of him smiling in ways he rarely smiled in real life. I touched one gently. His eyes always softened behind the camera. For a moment, it felt like he was sitting next to me. But then I saw it, a faded leather wallet tucked under a folded shirt. Not his usual one, not the one he carried every day. Something made my fingers hesitate as I reached for it. It felt heavier than it should have, like it was holding its breath. I opened it slowly. There was no cash, no old ID. Just one thing, a bank card, black, scratched, unfamiliar. His name was printed on it in letters that still looked sharp, untouched by time. But the card itself, I had never seen it once in my life. My father hid everything in plain sight, but not this. This was different. This was something he had buried. I turned the card over, rubbing my thumb across the embossed numbers. My heart didn't race, it just shifted. Like something inside me had finally woken up. Why would he hide a bank card? Why give it no mention? Why leave it for me to find now of all times? The answer didn't come, but the fear did. Because I knew my father, and he didn't do anything without reason. I leaned back against the bed frame, closing my eyes. The light from the window warmed my face, but the cold from the floor pressed against my spine. It created a strange balance, as if the room was trying to keep me steady. My thoughts drifted to my husband, his voice echoing in the kitchen last night. The slam of the door behind me, the silence that followed. "Go," he had said. Just that, one word, and I went. Now here I was, holding a piece of my father's life I didn't understand. I stared at the card again. The numbers felt old, like they belonged to another story, one he never shared. A story he might have taken to his grave if I hadn't been forced back into this forgotten room. Maybe it was foolish, but I felt a pull toward it. A strange sense that this card wasn't just a piece of plastic. It was a question, and I was the only one left to answer it. When evening came, I hadn't moved from the spot. The sun dipped low, filling the room with an orange glow that made the dust look like falling snow. I wrapped my arms around my knees, feeling the quiet settle into my bones. My father's shadow felt close, as if he were standing in the doorway, watching me the way he used to, quietly, patiently, waiting for me to speak first. "Why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. Of course, he didn't answer, but the silence felt heavier now. Night grew darker and the air grew colder. I spread an old blanket on the bed and lay down, but sleep resisted me. The ceiling looked different in the dark, taller, heavier, like it carried memories I wasn't ready to know. I kept the card in my hand. I didn't trust leaving it on the table, even though I couldn't explain why. The longer I stared at it, the more it felt like a thread, one that could unravel everything. I thought I understood about him. By midnight, I knew what I had to do. I would go to the bank in the morning. Just to see. Just to understand. I wasn't hoping for money. I wasn't hoping for answers. I was hoping for a reason, any reason, to believe my father left me something more than silence. The room sighed with each shift of the wind. The floor creaked softly under the weight of the night. And I lay there, awake, exhausted, afraid. Not of the card, not of the truth it might carry, but of the possibility that I was about to learn something he never meant for me to know. So I closed my eyes and held the card tighter, letting the cold edge rest against my palm. Morning wasn't far, and neither were the secrets he left behind. The morning light felt thin, like it hadn't fully decided to show up. I walked toward the bank with yesterday's clothes still clinging to me. Stiff with sleep and street dust, the wind pressed gently against my back, as if nudging me forward when my own strength wasn't enough. I didn't feel embarrassed, just hollow. I could still hear my husband's voice from last night, echoing inside my ribs. The door shutting behind me, my suitcase hitting the stairs. But none of that mattered now. The only thing I carried was my father's old card, a neat piece of faded plastic worn smooth at the edges. It felt like holding a memory I never fully understood. When the glass doors of the bank slid open, the cold air met my face like a question. I stepped inside. The lobby was too bright. Lights hummed softly overhead, reflecting off polished floors that smelled faintly of chemicals and morning mopping. People stood in neat lines, tapping their feet, checking their watches, pretending not to notice each other. I kept my eyes low. I didn't belong here, not in the clothes I slept in, not with my hair tied back without care, not with fear clinging to my breathing. Still, I walked to the counter. The teller looked young, younger than I expected someone with that much responsibility to be. Her nails were painted a soft blue, chipped at the corners. She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Good morning," she said. My throat felt scraped dry. "Good morning," I whispered back. I slid the card across the counter. Her fingers paused mid-air before touching it. Just a second, but long enough for me to notice. She picked it up like it weighed more than plastic, turned it over. Read the faded lettering. Looked at me again, longer this time. Something changed in her face. Not fear, not confusion. Something quieter, like recognition she wished she didn't have. "One moment, please," she murmured. And then she walked away. I stood alone at the counter, my fingers tapping lightly against the edge, trying to appear calm. But my hands trembled, small earthquakes I couldn't control. She didn't come back alone. A man in a dark suit stepped beside her, murmuring something I couldn't hear. He looked older, but not in a fatherly way. More like someone who carried too many secrets in the pockets of his jacket. He nodded once, briefly, then approached me. "Miss Nadia?" he asked. His voice was polite. Too polite, the kind of politeness that sits between caution and calculation. "Yes," I answered. "Would you mind coming with me? Just to verify a few things." People in line turned their heads, just slightly. The kind of curiosity they pretended wasn't curiosity. The manager gestured toward a hallway behind the counter. My feet felt heavier than my body as I followed him. The hallway was narrow, quieter than the lobby, the air still as if waiting for something to happen. He led me into a room with beige walls and a single table at its center. A glass of water sat on the table untouched. A file rested beside it. The door clicked shut behind him. "Please sit," he said. I sat. He placed the card on the table between us like it was evidence. "Where did you get this?" "My father's things," I said softly. "It was in his wallet." He studied my face for a moment, as if measuring how much truth lived behind my words. "When did he give it to you?" "He didn't. He passed away." "I'm sorry to hear that." But his tone didn't carry sorrow, only procedure. He opened the file. "Did your father ever speak to you about his accounts?" "No." "About old business partners?" "No." "About any assets he held with our institution?" I shook my head. My hands were clasped together so tightly that my knuckles ached. The manager leaned back slightly, exhaling through his nose. "Our system froze the moment this card was scanned," he said quietly. I blinked. I don't understand." "It triggered an internal hold, automatic. Only certain accounts are tagged that way." I felt the room tighten around me. "What does that mean?" He closed the file gently. "It means," he said slowly, that this is not an ordinary card. And your father was not an ordinary client. The air grew heavier, thicker. I felt like I was breathing through cloth. The manager's eyes softened, but only slightly, not with comfort, but with caution. For now, I must freeze all activity connected to this account, he continued, until we verify ownership. I swallowed hard. The sound echoed in my own ears. Verify? My father is gone. I'm his daughter. Isn't that enough? He hesitated, a hesitation that told me more than any words could. There are protocols, he said finally. Accounts like this require confirmation from multiple departments. Multiple departments. Why would anyone need that for a card left in an old wallet? I tried to steady my breathing. I just needed to withdraw some money, I whispered. Just enough to get a place to stay. His gaze flickered. I understand, but you must understand, the nature of this account is complex. He stood slowly, smoothing the front of his jacket. We will contact you once we have clarity. Clarity, such a simple word to hide something so large. I stood too, though my legs trembled. As he opened the door for me, something in his posture shifted. He wasn't just being polite, he was being careful, as if I had become part of something he didn't want to touch too quickly. When I stepped into the hallway, the young teller was there, pretending to organize papers she'd already stacked neatly. She didn't look at me. Her shoulders were too still. Outside, the air felt different, heavier, colder, as though the clouds above had listened to everything. I didn't cry, not even when the wind pushed hair across my face and I realized I didn't know where to go next. I just wrapped my arms around myself, breathing slowly. I came here expecting confusion, maybe a little embarrassment, but not this. Not the kind of silence that makes people whisper in hallways. Not the kind of card that freezes systems. Not the kind of questions that turn strangers cautious. As I walked away from the bank, one thought settled at the back of my mind. Quiet, unsettling, impossible to ignore. Maybe I wasn't the only one who was shocked today. Maybe my father had left behind a story, and I had just stepped into the first chapter. The air in the small office felt stale, like a room that had been waiting too long for someone to breathe in it. I sat on the wooden chair, hands folded in my lap, watching dust float through a narrow beam of sunlight that slipped between blinds. It reminded me of mornings in my father's study, places where the light entered quietly, as though asking permission. The manager closed the door behind him with a soft click. He didn't sit right away. He stood there for a moment, studying me the way someone studies a fragile photograph, afraid it might crumble in their hands. Thank you for waiting, Miss Nadia, he finally said, lowering himself into the chair opposite mine. I nodded, though my throat felt too tight to speak. He placed a slim folder on the table, not thick, not heavy, but somehow it felt heavier than anything I carried with me. He folded his hands, exhaled, and leaned forward slightly. I reviewed what we have available, he said. And there are things you should know. Those words, you should know, always seem harmless until they're not. My fingers curled around the edge of my chair. What do you mean? The manager opened the folder, revealing a few aging papers, a photograph, and a printed record with red markings I didn't understand. This account, he began slowly, was placed on internal watch over a decade ago. The word echoed in my mind. Internal. Watch. Like eyes watching something they didn't trust. Why? I whispered. He hesitated, glancing at the papers as though searching for gentler wording. Because the balance in the account doesn't match the financial profile your father presented to the world. A chill crept up my arms. My father was a school custodian, I said quietly. He worked late. He fixed broken chairs. He brought chalk dust home on his shoes. Yes, the manager replied softly. But the activity we see here is not the life of a man earning a custodian's wage. He turned a page. Large deposits. Regular, unexplained, and amounts that made my stomach tighten. I don't understand, I murmured. Most people wouldn't, he said gently, especially if they were kept out of certain aspects of a parent's life. I felt something inside me shift, an old memory rising uninvited. My father, sitting at the kitchen table after midnight, talking on the phone in a voice too low to be casual. His hand covering the mouthpiece when I walked in for water. Another memory. The drawer in his study he always locked. Always. And another. The winter he paid our neighbor's medical bills without blinking. We didn't have that kind of money. Not then, not ever. Or so I thought. The room felt smaller. I don't know what any of this means, I whispered, almost to myself. The manager watched me carefully, not with suspicion now, but with something closer to sympathy. "Sometimes," he said softly, "the people we love carry lives we never see." He slid the photograph toward me. It was my father, much younger, standing in front of a building I didn't recognize, wearing a suit I had never seen, a serious expression on his face, not unkind, just guarded, as if he already knew parts of himself needed hiding. I traced the edge of the picture with my thumb. "I've never seen this," I said. "It was connected to the account." "How?" "We don't know. The file is incomplete." Incomplete. Just like my understanding of the man who raised me, the manager continued, flipping through the papers. "These transactions," he said, pointing at the red-marked list, "began around the same time your father changed jobs." Changed jobs. Except he never told me he changed jobs. He always said he worked at the school since before I was born. "Are you saying he lied to me?" I asked, the words trembling before they left my mouth. "Not necessarily a lie," he said softly. "Sometimes people protect us by giving us the simpler version of a story." I looked at the numbers again. They didn't look like protection. They looked like secrets. Heavy ones, the kind that stain decades. The manager closed the folder quietly, as if the sound might break something fragile in the room. "There's more," he said. My chest tightened. Of course there was. He reached into a drawer and pulled out another document. Older, edges frayed. The paper was yellowed, creased, handled too many times by too many unknown hands. "This," he said, placing it before me, "was the original agreement linked to the account." The print was faded, but one thing stood out clearly. My father's signature, strong, confident, much surer than I ever remembered his hands being. "What kind of agreement is this?" I asked. "We're not entirely certain," he admitted. "Some sections are redacted even from our internal system." Redacted? By who? Why? The more he explained, the less I understood, but the deeper the questions burrowed inside me. My father, who taught me how to plant tomatoes, who hummed old songs while washing dishes, who saved every school drawing I ever made. That same man had an account that froze a bank system, and a file with blacked out lines, and a history I wasn't meant to see. I thought I knew him. I thought love meant understanding. But sitting in that small beige office, with the bank manager's calm eyes watching my face shift and fall apart, I realized how much I didn't know, how much he never told me, how much he protected or hid. The manager pushed the folder gently toward me, his hands careful. "These documents belong to you now," he said. "Maybe they hold answers. Maybe they don't, but I think you should have them." I swallowed, staring at the papers, as if they might rearrange themselves into something logical if I looked long enough. He softened his voice. "Nadia," he asked, "did you really not know?" The question lingered in the air. Did I? Did I ever truly see my father? Or did I only see the version he chose to show me? The room felt too quiet. I picked up the folder with both hands. Not because it was heavy, but because it felt like the beginning of something I wasn't ready for. As I walked out of the office, the light in the hallway seemed different, dimmer. Or maybe it was just my eyes adjusting to a new truth. A truth that whispered, "Your father lived in shadows, and now you're walking straight into them." I didn't go home after leaving the bank. I went to his room instead, the room I'd kept locked for months, as if avoiding it could somehow stop the grief from spreading through the walls. But today, the air felt different, heavy, expectant, as if the past had been waiting behind the door, tapping its fingers, whispering, "It's time." The documents the manager handed me felt heavier than paper. They were the weight of a life I didn't understand. The moment I stepped into my father's room, I closed the door behind me and leaned against it, forcing myself to breathe. Dust motes floated like tiny ghosts in the sunlight, settling over his books, his old radio, his neatly folded clothes. Everything looked ordinary, painfully ordinary. Yet nothing about today was ordinary. I sat on the floor, the documents scattered around me like fallen leaves, each one whispering something I wasn't ready to hear. The first thing I opened was a bundle of receipts tied with a string so fragile it broke on its own. The receipts weren't for groceries or utilities. They were stamped by shops and offices from towns I'd never been to, towns my father had no reason to visit. Small amounts at first, then larger ones. Money withdrawn, then moved, then transferred. I frowned. "Baba, what were you doing?" My voice sounded foreign in the silence. I picked up another document. A letter, written in handwriting that wasn't his. Neat, careful, feminine. It began simply, "Thank you. I don't know what we would have done without you." The rest of the letter was frustratingly vague. No names, no details, only gratitude and a signature I couldn't decipher. My stomach tightened. Who was we? I opened another envelope, this one older, yellowed at the corners. Inside was a small note. "I'll send more when I can. Take care of her." Her? My breath caught. Her? I stared at the words until they blurred. A dozen memories collided inside my head. Baba stepping outside to take phone calls. His sudden trips out of town. The locked drawers he never let me open. His habit of coming home late with mud on his shoes and sorrow in his eyes. Had I really lived with a stranger all those years? I reached for the small metal box he used to keep under his bed. It had always been locked, but now the latch opened with a soft click, as if the lock had finally grown tired of keeping secrets. Inside were more letters, more receipts, a photograph. My hands trembled as I lifted it. A woman stood beside a small child, a girl no more than 5. The woman was smiling, but her eyes looked tired. The back of the photo had a date and a name I didn't know. My throat tightened. "Who are you?" I whispered to the woman. "And why was my father sending you money?" The silence didn't answer. Instead, something colder did, a realization creeping up my spine. These weren't the actions of a man who'd stumbled into a mistake. This was a commitment, a long-term, deliberate, secret commitment. Decades of transfers, years of letters, consistent support. This wasn't charity, this was responsibility. I pressed the heel of my hand against my forehead, trying to silence the sudden, dizzying swirl of possibilities. Had my father lived a double life? Another family? Another daughter? Or had he been protecting someone? Hiding someone? Paying off something? The room felt smaller with every question. I stood up suddenly, the photograph still in my hand, and walked to his desk. The drawers slid open with a dryness that matched the room's stale air. Inside were maps, marked, circled, folded from overuse. Small towns, remote villages, places I'd never heard him mention. Why? Why all the secrecy? I sat on the bed, his bed, and felt a lump rise in my throat. I used to think I knew him. I used to think he was a simple man living a simple life, earning just enough, saving just enough, loving just enough. But the account he left behind, the quiet wealth, the hidden correspondence. My father had been many things. Simple was not one of them. I ran my fingers over the photograph again, tracing the child's face. She had large eyes, innocent eyes, eyes that felt familiar in a way I couldn't explain. A chill crept over me. What if she wasn't a stranger after all? Before I could finish the thought, a sound tore through the quiet. A faint crunch, footsteps. Outside my door, my heart stopped. I froze, every muscle locking into place. I knew those weren't ordinary footsteps. Not the careless shuffle of neighbors in the hallway. Not the harmless noise of kids running outside. These were slow, deliberate, too deliberate. Someone had followed me. Someone who knew about the account. Someone who wanted to know what I had learned. My mind raced. Had the bank called someone? Had someone been watching that account for years? Was my father's internal watch warning more dangerous than the manager had implied? I gathered the papers quickly, sliding them under the bed, tucking the photo into my pocket. My breathing turned shallow. Another step, right outside. The shadow at the bottom of the door shifted, tall, unmoving. I pressed myself against the wall, my pulse pounding so loudly I feared it would give me away. Whoever was out there wasn't leaving. They were listening, waiting, for me to move, for me to open the door, for me to reveal whether I knew the truth my father had died protecting. I covered my mouth with my hand to silence my breathing. The floorboard creaked again, closer this time. A whisper rose from the back of my mind, carrying the weight of everything I had uncovered today. "You aren't the only one shocked. Nadia, someone else has been waiting for this moment too." The footsteps stopped. Silence pressed against the door like a threat. And in that suffocating stillness, I realized something terrifying. Whatever my father was hiding, it wasn't just a secret. It was a danger. And that danger was now standing on the other side of my door. For a long moment, I couldn't move. The shadow beneath the door had been still for so long that the silence itself felt alive, pulsing against my ribs. My fingers hovered over the knob, trembling. Every instinct screamed at me to stay hidden, to stay quiet, to pretend no one was home. But this wasn't fear anymore. This was a boundary I had avoided my whole life. The line between what I thought I knew about my father and whatever truth lay on the other side. I swallowed hard, steadied my breath, and slowly turned the knob. The door opened with a soft creak, and there she was. Not a threat, not a stranger cloaked in danger, but an elderly woman, thin, fragile-looking, her gray hair braided neatly behind her head. She held her hands clasped in front of her chest, as if unsure whether she'd be welcomed or chased away. Her eyes, soft, tired, carrying years of unspoken grief, lifted to meet mine. "Are you Nadia?" she asked gently. My lips parted, but the tension in my chest stole my voice. I nodded. Her shoulders sagged with visible relief. "Good," she murmured. I've been waiting for you to open that door." I blinked, confused. "Who are you?" The woman hesitated, then spoke the name I had found on one of the old documents, the name I had never heard before today. My heart lurched. "You knew my father?" I whispered. A sad, tender smile touched her lips. "My dear, your father saved my life." She asked if she could come in, and though uncertainty prickled at me, something in her gentle manner disarmed every wall I tried to rebuild. I stepped aside. She entered the room slowly, her gaze drifting across my father's belongings. The books, the framed photos, the old radio. A soft sigh escaped her, like she was greeting an old friend. "I haven't been in this house since before he passed," she said. "I didn't want to intrude on your grief." Her voice trembled on the last word, revealing that she had been grieving too. We sat across from each other, she on the old wooden chair, I on the edge of the bed, the document still hidden beneath it. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded letter. "This was meant for you," she said, "but he never had the chance to give it." My breath hitched. With shaking hands, I unfolded the letter. It was written in my father's familiar handwriting, the same looping strokes that had filled every birthday card and every note he left on the fridge. "Nadia, forgive me for the things I couldn't tell you. Some truths protect more than they hide. One day you will understand, and when that day comes, you will not be alone." The woman watched me read, her expression softening. "He knew this day would come," she said quietly. I looked up. "What is all this? Who are you to my father?" She took a deep, steadying breath. "Years ago," she began, "I was in trouble. Trouble that could have ruined my life. My husband. He borrowed money from the wrong people. Dangerous people. When he disappeared, they came after me." My pulse quickened. "I had no family," she continued. "No money. No way to escape." Her eyes glistened. "And then your father appeared. I don't know how he found out about my situation, but he did. He helped me, paid the debt, protected me until it was safe for me to start over." I stared at her, stunned. "He kept supporting me even after the danger passed," she said, her voice cracking. "Not because I asked, but because he promised he would never let me fall again." A sharp ache formed in my chest. My father, the quiet, modest man I thought I'd known, had carried another person's survival on his shoulders for years without ever seeking recognition. But it didn't explain everything. "The bank," I said. "Why did they panic when I used his card?" Her expression shifted, a shadow crossing her features. "Because the account wasn't just money," she said. "It was watched, flagged, protected. The people who threatened me long ago, they were involved in things far bigger than we knew. Your father's payments were being monitored by authorities, just to ensure the wrong people didn't resurface." She sighed deeply. "They needed to know the card wasn't in the wrong hands. His account was tied to an old investigation, one he inadvertently stepped into by helping me." The pieces clicked, painfully, slowly, into place. "So the secrecy, all those years," I whispered. "Was never shame," she said, tears slipping down her cheeks. "It was protection. For me and for you." I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by a mixture of grief and reverence. I had spent years wondering why my father guarded certain things, why he stayed up late, why he traveled without explanation. He wasn't living a second life, he was protecting one. "Why come now?" I asked softly. She reached out and touched my hand, her touch feather light. "Because the moment the bank froze that account, I knew they would contact you. And I knew you would find the documents. I didn't want you to fear the truth." A single tear escaped down my cheek. She continued, "Your father told me that when the time came, you would seek answers, and that it was my duty to give them." I looked at her, really looked at her and saw not a stranger, but a living piece of my father's hidden kindness. Slowly, she stood up and walked toward the door. "You've inherited not just his account," she said softly, "but the goodness he carried and the truth he protected." I held the card in my palm, the same card that had once terrified the bank, the same card my father guarded until his last breath. It felt different now, not dangerous, not mysterious, but heavy with love, the kind that sacrifices silently. The woman gave me a final gentle smile. "He trusted you, Nadia, more than anyone." And then she stepped out of the room, closing the door quietly behind her. I sat there for a long time, staring at the card in my hand. My father hadn't just left me money. He had left me a legacy of courage, compassion, and a truth far bigger and far kinder than I ever imagined.